tested, and then launched into outer space. When NASA was created in 1958, it was directed to not only explore space, but make what it learned available to the world. One of the ways that this is accomplished here at the Kennedy Space Center is through these guided bus tours of the facilities, as well as the exhibits and presentations at Spaceport USA. The trees in rows on either side of the road are citrus groves. When NASA acquired this land from settlers, a number of groves existed. NASA and landowners entered into a contract whereby for a nominal fee, the groves would be leased so that the fruit could continue to be harvested. Citrus trees will bear fruit for about 100 years if properly cared for. The guard gate we are approaching is one of many placed around the Space Center to assure that only appropriately badged people enter the work areas. The building on your left is the Communications, Distribution, and Switching Center. The large satellite dishes receive and send data and audio and video communications between Kennedy Space Center, Mission Control in Houston, Texas, and NASA headquarters in Washington, D.C., through an RCA Americom satellite. Coming up on the right is the 3-story Central Instrumentation Facility. In this building are laboratories and workshops where some 24,000 sensitive measuring instruments are calibrated and maintained. Government and contractor personnel inside handle advanced computer systems used for all data processing on the center. Coming up on the right is the headquarters building, administrative hub for all spaceport activities. The spaceport's director, much of the Space Center's management team, and several hundred contractor personnel work in this 4-story building. This administrative environment is called the industrial area. Personal amenities like a barber shop, cafeterias, a credit union, gasoline station, and a health facility are situated here in this city-like suburb of the Space Center, which also includes warehouses, maintenance, and other storage and service facilities. On the left is the largest structure in the industrial area, the Operations and Checkout Building. The spacecraft, which were used for the Moon mission, Skylab, and the Apollo-Soyuz project, were all prepared for launch here. Many of the payloads which are carried by the space shuttle, including the European-built Space Lab, are assembled and checked out in this building. There are living quarters on the 3rd floor, which are used by astronauts when working or training at the center. The area with these
ahead of us on the left, the area with the steel structures ahead on the left.
Ahead and to your left is where hardware bound for the launch pads is initially inspected and tested before being put to use. The building ahead and to the right is the parachute facility, where the solid rocket boosters' parachutes are cleansed and packed in their flight casings. The parachutes unfurl after the solid boosters have expended their fuel and are jettisoned away from the orbiter for a splashdown in the Atlantic Ocean about 150 miles east of here.
After making this left turn and getting beyond this building on the left, you'll get a better view of the launch equipment test facility. And again, it is there that they check out new launching equipment before it is moved to the launching site to be used. The nearest launch site is in the distance ahead of us 5 miles away, to the right of that tall building ahead that has the flag painted on the side of it. 3.5 miles to the right of that building is where you'll find the nearest launching pad, A of Complex 39, and on that launch pad is the shuttle vehicle that is scheduled for launch 1 week from today. Again, the building ahead will be the first stop on the tour. You'll be in this building for a bit more than 20 minutes, and when you come out of the building, you'll be boarding another bus. You'll be boarding another bus. Now, when you reach the end of that blue shelter or cover, turn right and come down to the most forward bus. Come down to the most forward bus. When you come out of the building, turning right. Thank you. Again, check your seats. Make sure you have all personal property. And we certainly hope you'll enjoy your stop here at the former Astronauts Training Building.
All the way in, please. All the way into the center room here. If you're over by the narrow tunnel, it is no longer used for that purpose. At the end of the Apollo program, the simulators that we used to train the astronauts were removed. In its place now is the equipment sitting here on the floor. Look up ahead near the ceiling, and you can see that screen.
You have entered a NASA spaceport. The Apollo crews work in this room, practicing every aspect of what they'd be doing on their odyssey in space. Since Earth began, gravity has ruled our existence. Yet in this century alone, light and space technologies have broken the bonds of gravity to throw open a doorway to the moon. The 3-day flights to the moon were made by 9 Apollo crews aboard Apollo Command Service modules. The Command Service module on display here is identical to those used on all lunar missions. This is actual flight hardware, real equipment which could have been flown to the moon. The cone-shaped front end section is the command module. It provided living and working space for the 3-man crew during their half-million-mile round trip. The Apollo crew worked in comfortable clothing, moving freely within the spaceship. The service module is just behind the cone-shaped command module. It contained the life support systems, electrical, communications, and propulsion. It carried the engine and fuel for the return trip to Earth. After the Apollo spaceship achieved orbit above the moon, the lunar module was used by 2 of the crew to descend to the surface. The lunar module and scientific equipment displayed in this room are actual flight hardware. The lunar module is just as you'd see it on the moon. The lower half of the module is the descent stage. Its engine was used to control the landing on the moon. That gold-colored foil around the lower section is Mylar. It's a tough insulation against daytime heat that would boil water instantly. The upper half of the lunar module is the ascent stage, containing the crew compartment and liftoff engine. This small compartment was home for our lunar explorers for up to 5 days while they lived and worked on the moon. The lever on the side of the lunar module could never support the weight of a fully spacesuited astronaut on Earth, but in lunar gravity, a 200-pound Earth man would only weigh a little over 30 pounds. Neil Armstrong was the first to use the lunar module ladder on the first moon landing, July 20th, 1969.
That's one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind.
Each crew of astronauts set up scientific equipment around their lunar base camp. The instruments measured moon quakes, temperature variations, and cosmic particles hitting the moon.
She has to fly to the moon now, huh?
Base camp was powered by a nuclear electric generator. Data was relayed to Earth for years before the equipment was turned off from Earth. It can be turned on again whenever more information is needed. The large umbrella-shaped antenna acted as a transmitting and receiving relay station between mission control on Earth and men at work on the lunar surface. In order to work on the moon, each astronaut was outfitted in a heavy spacesuit with life support systems in his backpack. Without that suit, a man could never survive the vacuum of space, deadly solar radiation, and temperatures in hundreds of degrees. Moving about in heavy spacesuits was restrictive, but the lower lunar gravity was helpful. At the right of the moon base exhibit, a lunar rover vehicle is being deployed. Lunar rover vehicles were used by 3 Apollo crews to drive over the moon's surface. With battery-powered 4-wheel drive, the rover allowed the astronauts to travel several miles from their base camp. Top speed was about 9 miles an hour.
See, when he hits the craters, it starts bouncing, and when he gets his booster tail, man, you're really bouncing. He's got about 2 wheels on the ground. He's a big booster tail out of all 4 wheels, and as he turns his skid, the back end breaks loose just like on snow. Then I'll tell you, he's never seen a driver like this.
The rover also carried the astronauts to the mountains of the moon and to the edge of deep craters. The astronauts collected rock and soil samples from many areas of the moon for study back on Earth. 3 slightly used rovers are still on the moon, just waiting for someone to arrive with fresh batteries.
Okay, Houston, as I scared out here, wondering if we got okay. Sort of realize that fundamental truth to our nature and must explore. This is exploration and it's crazy.
At the end of each exploration, the crew would blast off in the upper half of the lunar module, the ascent stage. The lower half served as their launch platform. American astronauts went to the moon in peace for all mankind, and they will return. However, the next lunar mission will be flown by a new generation of astronauts and spaceships. The men of Apollo are looking to today's young men and women and the teenagers of America to carry out the next flight to the moon. The challenge is yours. Today's youth must prepare to plan that voyage, build the spaceships, design lunar bases, and again travel to the moon in peace for all mankind.
In just a few moments, you'll be going up the ramp into the second room to watch the second presentation, which is the simulated launch of Apollo 11 that took place July 16, 1969, with Neil Armstrong, Buzz Aldrin, and Michael Collins. While we're waiting for the room to clear out, now's the time if you'd like to take photographs to take them before the lights do go out. The lights will remain on for about 2 minutes and then they'll automatically go on. We have no control over the lighting system. It is all part of the automated program. So in about 2 minutes, the program will recycle itself. The next group is due in, and that's when the lights will go out. All the way down to the
Sam, don't climb there. You're going to get hurt.
Standing 36 stories tall and with a fiery breath producing 180 million horsepower. This massive machine was the product of combined imaginations, talents, and skills of a determined people. It was created as a response to a call to yield to no nation our leadership in science, technology, and the ability to sail this new ocean of space.
I believe that this nation should commit itself to achieving the goal before this decade is out of landing a man on the moon and returning him safely to the earth.
Putting Americans on the moon was a national effort. More than 400,000 Americans were directly involved in the effort. They labored in industrial complexes, universities, and NASA centers, from the Atlantic to the Pacific, from the Gulf of Mexico to the Canadian border. It was to the Kennedy Space Center that the nation's rivers of technology would flow, to meet and emerge, to expose their cargo to a test by fire. It is here that creation ends. It is here that this dormant machine, 15 million separate parts, is given birth for a brief but purposeful life, to carry men where no man has gone before. An Apollo 7 launch countdown for a lunar mission is underway. You are in the fire mode, containing the control and monitoring equipment for the most powerful space vehicle ever launched. The countdown is holding T-minus 3 minutes and 15 seconds. 3 hours ago, the astronaut crew left their quarters and moved to the launch pad. They are now inside the spacecraft, waiting for the countdown to terminate. The display board on your right indicates that NASA's worldwide tracking network is ready for launch. The network includes ground stations, tracking ships, and especially instrumented aircraft. The terminal comm sequence board on your left shows the present status of the launch vehicle. When the countdown is resumed, this board will display the final 3 minutes, 7 seconds of launch activity. The test supervisor is polling his test conductors. We should be about ready to pick up the count.
This is Apollo 7 launch control. We are go for Apollo 11. Firing command coming in now. We're on an automatic sequence. System master computer supervises hundreds of events occurring over these last few minutes. We are go with all elements of the mission at this time.
This is the launch operations manager. The launch team wishes you good luck and Godspeed.
And the final checks between the several key members of the crew here in the control center and the astronauts. Launch operations manager Paul Donnelly wishes the crew on the launch team's behalf good luck and Godspeed. Neil Armstrong reported back when he received the good wishes. Thank you very much. We know it will be a good flight. We're still going on Apollo 11 at this time. The vehicle is starting to pressurize as far as the propellant tanks are concerned, and all is still go. Remember our status for 2 minutes, 10 seconds and counting. The target for the Apollo 11 astronauts. The moon at liftoff will be at a distance of 218,096 miles away. We just passed the 2-minute mark on the countdown. T-minus 1 minute, 54 seconds, and counting. Our status board indicates that the oxidizer tanks in the second and third stages now have pressurized. We continue to build up pressure in all 3 stages here at the last minute to prepare for liftoff. T-minus 1 minute, 35 seconds on the Apollo mission. The flight to land, first men on the moon. All indications coming in to the control center at this time indicate where to go. 1 minute, 25 seconds and counting. Our status board indicates the third stage completely pressurized. 80-second mark has now been passed. We'll go on full internal power at the 50-second mark in the countdown. Guidance system goes on internal 17 seconds, leading up to the ignition sequence of 8.9 seconds. We're approaching the 60-second mark on the Apollo 11 mission. T-minus 60 seconds and counting. We passed T-minus 60. 55 seconds and counting. Neil Armstrong just reported back. It's been a real smooth countdown. We passed the 50-second mark. Power transfer is complete. We're on internal power. We launch vehicle at this time. 40 seconds away from the Apollo 11 liftoff. All the second stage tanks now pressurized. 35 seconds and counting. We are still go with Apollo 11. 30 seconds and counting. Astronauts report it feels good. T-minus 25 seconds. 20 seconds and counting. T-minus 15 seconds. Guidance is internal. 12, 11, 10, 9. Ignition sequence starts. 6.
Breaking the shackles of Earth's gravity, the mother planet was left behind, and the moon loomed up ahead. On July 20th, 1969, man became a creature of another world. He had begun the exploration of the solar system. 5 more crews would follow as Apollo astronauts explored this alien world. Apollo's achievements represent a peak in mankind's technological development. But Apollo also brought us a new realization of the smallness and fragility of our Earth as a harbor of life for the entire human race. Technology acquired in the space program has been pressed into service in virtually every aspect of man's life on Earth. In clearing the way for bold new steps into space to benefit all mankind, Apollo was the end of the beginning. Proud prologue to a glorious beginning.
process components of the future space station. Components be checked out in that building, they're constructing. Then the components be carried along with the shuttle so the astronauts can assemble the components in the future Freedom Space Station.
Public bus tours of America's spaceport began in 1966 and have been operating continuously ever since. Because the center is an operational launch base, there are times when portions of the tour are changed. Variations to the tour itinerary usually occur just before a scheduled launch. In some cases, buses are rerouted to permit visitors to view a launch as part of their tour. Bus tours are operated by TW Services Incorporated under contract to NASA. The tours, as well as Spaceport USA, are self-supporting and are not operated at government or taxpayers' expense. Here in the industrial area, several thousand people are engaged in developing the plans and schedules necessary for successful launch operations. This is where aerospace research and development ideas and theories are brought to reality. The government industry team consists of approximately 2,000 federal employees and 11,000 contractor employees who represent dozens of international industrial firms like Boeing, EG&G Company, Lockheed, Martin Marietta, McDonnell Douglas, Rockwell, and United Technologies. Space Center employees have a variety of backgrounds. While many are engineers and computer experts, there are also construction and maintenance workers, clerks, drivers, and secretaries. These are everyday jobs that we are familiar with, yet they are all an essential part of the space program. Fire and security protection for the grounds, buildings, and space hardware is provided by a 24-hour-a-day, 7-day-a-week guard force. The Kennedy Space Center is fortunate to have a very competent team of personnel from every walk of life. We are proud of their accomplishments. Without their skill and dedication, space exploration would not be possible.
There will be a lock transfer operation in a lock storage area. The perimeter.
The large pedestal-supported structures in this area are called mobile launch platforms. They are the actual launch platforms from which the space shuttle begins its journey. These launch platforms are carried into the VAB by the crawler transporter, where the solid rocket boosters, external fuel tank, and orbiter are placed on top with giant cranes. The crawler transporter then moves the launch platforms and its flight hardware to the pad. As we drive by the mobile launch platform, please take note of the 3 openings in the center of the structure. They serve as flame chutes for the shuttle and liftoff. The two rectangular-shaped openings are for the flames of the solid rocket boosters, and the square one is for the shuttle's three main engines. Rooms where launch preparation is monitored and controlled by a network of computers. Government and contractor personnel inside represent all facets of the space shuttle and its payloads during the final checkout and launch.
White vehicle on your left is one of 4 modified armored personnel carriers used by NASA to rescue the astronauts in case of emergency.
Have you ever ridden in a car this size?
Moves the mobile launch platform and the space shuttle over this roadway to the launch pad. The crawler way, which is as wide as an 8-lane highway, was originally designed to support the combined weight of the transporter, mobile launcher, Saturn V rocket, and Apollo spacecraft, about 18 million pounds. In order to support this incredible amount of weight, 6 feet of earth was removed and replaced with layers of limestone and hydraulic fill, which was compacted. Asphalt was then poured, and a final roadbed of river rock was added to minimize friction for the crawler as it journeys more than 3 miles to the launch pad.
Crawler transporter goes out and comes back the same stone roadways. Crawler transporter so large it straddles the 50-foot wide grass median.
Do you want to sit in my chair?
Crawler transporter weighs 6 million pounds. The mobile launch platform.
The 2 launch pads and 2 buildings that you see to the distant right are where the Titan rockets are prepared and launched. It was here that the Viking mission to Mars and the Voyager planetary missions began. The tall structure on the horizon to the front left of the bus is Launch Pad A, used for most of the space shuttle launches.
Camera stop between the 2 launch pads. You can take the same road. We're not going out.
The shuttle is made up of 4 main parts. The large airplane-like portion, approximately the size of a DC-9, is the orbiter. The orange-colored tank attached to the underside of the orbiter is a fuel tank, 154 feet long and almost 28 feet in diameter. It's used to supply liquid hydrogen and oxygen to the main engines of the orbiter until it reaches orbital altitude, usually about 150 miles above the surface of the Earth. 2 white rock above the bottom of the flame trench. The service towers on the pad provide access to the shuttle and have connections for fuel, electric power, and communications. Because of the large number of lightning strikes in this part of
Light mass, that white pole sticking up on top, fiberglass pole. Small man in front of us, one of the 5 camera pads around the launch pad.
A tower adjacent to the pad contains 300,000 gallons of water used during launches for cooling and sound suppression.
See that? See that space shuttle? It's saying go out in space in a couple days. What do you think of that? Stay down, honey.
Okay. Pero yung ano eh, yung magdi-design yan ay pinapasok sa gawa ko lang. Give me a break.
Contain liquid hydrogen and liquid oxygen, the fuel and oxidizer loaded into the external tank for use by the main engines of the orbiter. Since the launch pad is a storage area for these and other exotic fuels, the entire area is fenced and carefully guarded. Earth orbit, then checked out to be sure everything is working properly before being placed into final higher orbit. Satellites that malfunction can be retrieved and repaired in orbit or returned to the Earth. Space Lab, a to report launches from Complex 39. Up to 3,000 reporters and photographers from around the world have been here to cover an Apollo or Space Shuttle launch. The press site is 3.5 miles from the launch pads. It is the closest point from which a shuttle launch can be viewed.
I headed right as a Saturn V rocket type. I could use the Apollo program and all the manned flights to the moon. We'll have a 10-minute camera stop so you walk down beside the rocket.
Well, Sam, I guess we're going to have to go see rockets this time. We're going to go see a rocket.
For your safety and security.
Hey, Sam.
Getting a picture of Daddy doing what Daddy does best.
What? Can't see Sam.
Good. She didn't see me.
January 31st, 1958, Explorer 1, America's first artificial satellite, was launched. On May 5th, 1961, Alan Shepard became the first American in space when he blasted off on a suborbital flight, and the imagination of Americans was kindled. President Kennedy reflected the national sentiment with these words.
Space is open to us now, and our eagerness to share its meaning is not governed by the efforts of others. We go into space because whatever mankind must undertake, free men must fully share. I believe that this nation should commit itself to achieving the goal, before this decade is out, of landing a man on the moon and returning him safely to the Earth.
This bold undertaking was designated Project Apollo. There was no spaceport, no lunar rocket or spacecraft, no government industry team. All these had to be created. It was a great national challenge. Satellites has made worldwide communication reliable and much less expensive. We routinely watch events from all over the world as they occur in the comfort of our homes. A telephone call across a continent or an ocean is as simple and as clear as a call across town. The weather satellite system has made forecasting a much more exact science. Early storm warnings have reduced the loss of life and property. Earth Resources satellites continually monitor the Earth and have led to the discovery of valuable new energy sources. They also monitor food crops and help to predict both surpluses and shortages. Satellite observations have made major contributions to oceanography, making possible measurement of the movement of the continental plates and perhaps one day predict or prevent earthquakes. Technology led to the development of miniature electronic circuits, which led to a host of other miniaturization. Transistor radios, pocket calculators, personal computers, and video games, to name only a few. Solar cells convert energy into electricity to power satellites, and has generated a greatly expanded interest in ways to utilize solar energy on Earth. We have seen many items that were developed or related to the space program come into our lives. Things like freeze-dried foods, a heart pacemaker, voice-controlled wheelchairs, a voice synthesizer for use by the blind, fire-resistant materials, and an implantable drug dispenser which will administer proper dosages continuously for up to 30 days. The electrically heated faceplate of the space helmet has led to the infant warming dome used in hospitals for prematurely born infants. The advantages of our ventures into space are many and varied. A benefit that is more difficult to directly assess is the change that can occur in the minds of people. Change that can affect the way people think about or deal with a problem. An example of this is when we first saw the Earth from the moon. We saw the Earth as a small, beautiful, and fragile oasis in the vastness of space. The necessity of protecting it became clear, and a new impetus was given to conservation efforts. In his 1984 State of the Union address, President Ronald Reagan directed NASA to build a permanently manned space station and to have it operational within a decade. In keeping with a long-term policy of international cooperation, the President invited other nations to participate, including Europe, Japan, and Canada. This goal will allow expansion of the civilian space program into the future. We are now returning to Spaceport, USA, where you will have the opportunity to see a moon rock, plus many articles of space hardware, including spacecraft that have been in space and returned to Earth. Please take the opportunity to view the exciting IMAX space film, The Dream is Alive, narrated by Walter Cronkite and projected on a giant 5.5-story screen. This film contains dramatic on-orbit footage. Many astronauts say it's the next best thing to being in space.
Okay, Sam. You say hi, Papa now.
Hi, Papa.
Say, Papa, I love you.
Hi, Papa. I love you.
Tell Papa you having fun.
I'm having fun.
Where are you at?
Here.
Where are you?
Here.
Where are you, though? Are you at the Kennedy Space Center? Can you say that? Did you go see a rocket? Sam, did you just go see a rocket?
Yeah, it was the first one in.
Those are rockets.
They're covered 236 miles downrange in the Atlantic.
Couldn't even see out of that little hole.
Wait, they were sitting in the top too of that.
How did they get up there?
How did they climb in?
How did they get food in there?
Well, they probably had there's probably some sort of a way to. See, these are all questions you can answer on the tour. Maybe they know. There's probably some sort of. They probably have liquid. It's all liquid. They probably just I know. They had
The second astronaut team spent 59 days aboard the Sky Laboratory. They were soon doing extra work for the spaceship, and by mission's end, had performed almost twice the scientific work required in the mission plan.
Okay, I'm going to stay out from between the rocks. It's a beautiful east-west split rock. It's even got a north overhang that we can work with.
Hey, Jack, we see your gold visor up. You may want to put it down out here in the sun. That's a little hard, huh? Yeah. Hey, there, Chip, our name to the universe. I think no more significant contribution has Apollo made to history. I think everybody ought to feel very proud of that fact. Now, look at just the twinkle toes here. Yeah?
Guess what?
about at the exit.
The information that was returned to Earth was immaculate. The view spectacular. But our goal was to land upon these planets. And if we were to land upon the red soil of Mars,
Sam.
Hein?
Oi.
Quer tirar uma foto aparecendo no ônibus espacial?
Dá conta?
Space shuttle, they
Look at this. Look above.
Yes. What is all that?
Those are the tiles.
Those are
tiles
the
they
heat
keep talking about.
That keeps the sun off. The things that the science guy brought.
That's what protects them from burning.
I remember he put a blowtorch on it and touched it. And it was hot.
Where all the other kids went off to.
Mom, hurry.
What do you mean hurry? Come on. What do you mean hurry for?
stairs and everything are just to transport people side roads. But they got nothing in here.
The material they take if they don't
There's the arm that thing is up and around and down. Hey, Allison, down. Otherwise, just get ahead.
My mom just went grocery shopping too. But my mom wanted me to bring her back some space. I know, but the ice cream's gonna melt. No, it isn't. Flight control. Where'd you read that?
Right up there.
Where'd you read that?
Shrimp,
Where?
look up, you'll read it. Up here in the window.
Oh, Mom, I thought you were talking about there was shrimp in there. I'm sitting here. Shrimp? Where?
Get down.
I could see. Look up. This is the window. Get down.
Guys filming. Ow, the buttons.
I'm stuck.
Did you notice this
Get down.
looks like it's holding everything.
Oh, there it is. Contains seats for as many as 5 crew members.
Here's TV power.
Where's we get down?
All the TV power to show us the cameras. Sorry about that.
That's all right.
All right. Let's hope.
Yes, dear. Waste collection system. That's funny.
Yeah, well, I'll tell you later what else they do. Come on. Would they have
no gravity.
It was located about 410 feet above the ground, near the top of the umbilical tower on the mobile launch.
Hey, baby.
At the outer end of the access arm is a small white room nestled against the Apollo command module. All of the astronauts...
I'm gonna walk through that and then we can go to the souvenir shop.
The Apollo Station ground supply
Sam,
line
come here, honey.
to the
We'll walk
stages
through
of
it.
the Saturn rocket and the Apollo spacecraft. They also provided access for technicians to the interior of the rocket and spacecraft. In the last moments of countdown, just before liftoff, all 9 arms were automatically disconnected and were swung away from the vehicle to provide clearance for lift.
Sam, slow up. Samantha. Ah, totally ignored.
You are following in the footsteps of men who have walked on the moon. Provide clearance for liftoff. You are following in the footsteps of men who have walked on the moon. The orange steel structure is an access arm. This access arm is about 60 feet long and weighs over 50,000 pounds. For launch, it was located about 410 feet above the ground, near the top of the umbilical tower on the moon launch. At the other end of the access arm is a small white room nestled against the Apollo command module. It's a small white room nestled against the Apollo command module. All of the astronauts who flew on Apollo, Skylab, and Apollo
Come here, Sam. That's not for you to get up there.
to the interior of the rocket and spacecraft for minor repairs and adjustments. During the last moments of countdown, just before liftoff, all 9 arms were automatically disconnected and were swung away from the vehicle to provide clearance for liftoff.
Boy, look at the size of that engine. Yes, Sam. Yeah. Man. Yes, sweetheart. Let's go. Come on.